Welcome everyone, this is Yvonne Davis. I'm a psychic tarot astrologer and I have a bachelor's degree in political science and economics. So this is a blending of these two fields that I have expertise in. And today I'm going to continue looking at Donald Trump's chart specifically for the time period of Jupiter retrograde, because Jupiter goes retrograde tomorrow and lasts until about July 10th. So this will be very interesting because it will give us some information about the things that we've been looking at. So I'm going to go ahead and pull up his chart so you can have a look at it with me. So on the inside is Donald Trump's chart. And if you've been following this series of videos, then you're probably pretty familiar with this now. He has a Gemini sun that is conjunct the North Node opposite his moon, which is conjunct the South Node. What this means is that he was born on a total full moon eclipse. He also has his ascendant in Leo conjunct Mars. So I am going to show you what this looks like for tomorrow. The Jupiter retrograde starts on March 8th, so obviously I'm making this video on March 7th. And Jupiter will go retrograde on March 8th, 2018 at 11:46 p.m. in Washington, D.C. And that's what the outer chart is. So we're going to see how that lands on his birth chart and see what kind of information that can give us. And then we'll look ahead to when Jupiter goes retrograde, because that time period will tell us some things about what's going to be happening. So one of the first things I want to point out is something that I've been talking about in this series of videos, which is the fact that the nodes of the moon are right over his Pluto opposite his Saturn. And this generally can represent, has some meaning based on the mythology behind the story, because this is the story of Persephone. Pluto is the god of the underworld, and Ceres was the goddess of the harvest and Persephone's mother. If you're familiar with the story, then you might also know the names Hades and Demeter. Those are the other names for Pluto and Ceres. So the story is that Pluto opened the earth up underneath Persephone's feet, abducted her, took her down into the underworld and raped her, made her his wife and the queen of the underworld. And Demeter, or Ceres, was very unhappy about that. And she determined to make the land barren until the gods helped return her daughter. And so Persephone had to take 3 seeds of a pomegranate, and that allowed her to be above ground for part of the year and below ground for part of the year. And that gave us our seasons. That's the story. So there is symbolic meaning there. And what's interesting is that the nodes are crossing this opposition in his natal chart. So one of the things that you will see is how close the South Node is coming to a conjunction with Ceres in his 7th house of long-term meaningful relationships. This can be any kind of long-term meaningful relationships. It can be family, friends, marriage, business partners, co-workers, colleagues. It can even include open enemies. So there's something very interesting about the South Node conjoining Ceres. And I have been trying to understand what this is about. It could be about his marriage. It could be about his infidelities. It could be about the way he's been abusive toward women. And the other thought that came to me, and I'm just sharing this with you. You know, I trust that anyone who's watching this video is intelligent enough to think for themselves and make up their own minds. I'm just sharing with you what comes into my intuition. And one of the things that came in that was very interesting was the realization that this is the scythe or the sickle. And that has long been the symbol for Russia. So that was really interesting to me. The symbol just happened to be a scythe. So, which could also mean death. But I think in this sense, it usually represents women, but it also has a very destructive quality because it also represents the result of abuse. But anyway, during the time when Jupiter is retrograde, this is Jupiter in his 4th house of home, in the time that it is retrograde, it will bring about this conjunction of the South Node to Ceres. And so as we go forward, I will eventually do a reading at the very day when this conjunction will happen. We'll see what's going on in the news. So one of the things that the South Node represents is endings, losses, things that need to be released, things from the past. It's our past karma, and it's telling us, you know, these are the places in your life from your past that you've been working through your karma, and it's time to release something. So it can represent endings, losses, release, completions, also limitations. It has a quality similar to the full moon. Sometimes the full moon brings things that are good because it brings things to fruition and culmination. Other times full moons can be kind of painful because they bring things to an end that might feel more like a limitation, like a loss. And that's the quality that the South Node has. It's saying, hey, it's time for you to finish up with this karma here. It also has a quality like Saturn, that Saturn creates limitations and constrictions. It's like a planet that says, it tells you what things need to be cut away, what things you need to release from your life. You need to be done with these things. You need to learn your lessons and move on. And if you're not willing to do that, it's going to be painful. So that's what it's saying in his 7th house of others, that he has some karmic lessons that he needs to learn about the way he relates to other people. And certainly as we have been seeing this mass exodus from the White House, and he's standing up, you know, saying that everybody wants to work at the White House. Well, normally that might be true, but clearly it's not, because there has been a mass exodus of people from the White House. So clearly not everyone wants to work at the White House, certainly not right now. So I think that's part of what's going on here. And so that's going to bring it into a exact conjunction during the time of the Jupiter retrograde. So let me say something about Jupiter retrograde in his 4th house of home. Now the 4th house of home can represent many things, but one of the things it represents is where you actually live. And though he doesn't live in the White House full time, it is symbolically his home now. So it's very interesting that Jupiter is in his 4th house of home, because it definitely has something to do with his time in the White House. So the fact that it's going retrograde means that whatever lessons it's bringing about will have something to do with his time in the White House. So the other thing I want you to show you is that it's making this quincunx over here to his sun conjunct the North Node in Gemini. And as I said, well, the sun represents your inner core, and the North Node represents karma, the direction of your evolution. So there's something karmic about this, because the quincunx represents a karmic readjustment, and it's going from Jupiter in his 4th house of home, representing many things about his home. It can also represent your foundations, your family, but certainly it also represents his time in the White House, making this karmic readjustment up here to his sun and North Node, which are also karmic in Gemini. Okay, now let me look at this other side here with the North Node on his Pluto, also two very karmic points. So when they meet, it's like a combustion. Any karmic lessons that you have not yet learned, it will crumble the ground underneath your feet, just like what Pluto did to Persephone. It will make you feel like that's what's happening to you, like the ground is just dissolving under your feet, and you have no ground under your feet. You're just in free fall, and you're being taken down into the underworld for an initiation, which means you need to learn some karmic lessons. Okay, so when the North Node hits that point, that's going to be a point of intensity for him in terms of learning his karmic lessons. That will also happen during the Jupiter retrograde. Okay, so let's see what I want to look at next. The Saturn here is opposite his Mercury. Now, Mercury is all about communication. It's the way we communicate with the world. It's the way we think. It's the way we learn. It's the way we receive communication. It's also the technologies that we use for communications. And it's in his 12th house. And the 12th house rules things that are hidden. It rules several other subjects, but I think that's really what we're looking at here. Things that are hidden. So this is information, communication, and it's in his 12th house of things that are hidden. Saturn is opposite in his 6th house of work. So I've been saying in the series of videos, and I'm going to repeat it because I think it is so clear in this chart, that Saturn in his 6th house of work is all about grounding us in hard, cold reality. We cannot deny reality anymore when Saturn comes to bear. And so when Saturn is opposite his Mercury in the 12th house of things that are hidden, basically it's yanking it. It's saying, we're going to bring you down to the earth, no matter how hard I have to do this. That is what is going to happen. You are going to face reality, whether you like it or not, and the truth. So I think that that's what Saturn is saying when it's opposite his Mercury in the 12th house of things that are hidden, is that information is going to be made true. It's going to come to light. The truth is going to come to light, and it's going to be brought into the open. And it's also related to his 6th house of work. And that's one of the things that many of us have been waiting for, is when is he going to be held accountable for the things that he says? Because he will say anything on any day, and there's no consistency, no congruency, no transparency, no authenticity, no integrity. I mean, all of that is lacking. And so that's what Saturn is going to draw out, is it's going to draw out the truth, it's going to make it public, and it's going to ground it in reality. Okay, so I think a lot of us are looking forward to that. And that opposition, that exact opposition, will also happen during the Jupiter retrograde. Saturn will also, it won't quite reach this point, because it will go up to 9 degrees and then it will retrograde. But it will definitely make an exact opposition to his Mercury as it's moving direct. And then when it gets to 9 degrees, it will turn retrograde, and it will make another opposition to his Mercury. And then at some point, it will turn direct again and make a third opposition to his Mercury. So that may take some time, but it is going to happen. Okay, then let's see. The next thing I want to look at is this T-square. So you can see the Sun is conjunct Neptune. And as I said, when it's in its shadow side, it represents the shadow side of Neptune, which is all about, it rules mystery, but in its light side, that means spiritual mystery, the great mysteries. But when it's in its shadow side, it means delusion, deception, deceit, and mental illness, and things that are hidden. And so that's exactly what we've been dealing with here. So these two are conjoined. It's moving into a larger orb because it's a little over 4 degrees now, but it's still in effect, especially because it is making a T-square to his total full moon eclipse in his birth chart. And also we have the moon over here, which is moving into a conjunction with Mars. When the moon is conjunct Mars, that can make people very angry and rash and impulsive, and that's been part of the problem too. So we will get that conjunction, and it will form a T-square right over his total full moon eclipse. So that's going to be a difficult time for everyone. But that's been one of the problems. And so that is embedded in this Jupiter retrograde chart. All right, so then the next thing I want to talk about is Pluto. Pluto is moving into a conjunction with the vertex. And this won't quite reach exactitude. It'll get to 21 degrees before it moves retrograde, but it's getting very close here. And as I said, the vertex rules destiny, and Pluto is very karmic. And this is the 6th house of work, so it'll be interesting to see how that plays out when that's exact. But it'll be close enough once it gets to 21 degrees before it goes retrograde. It'll be close enough to have some impact. The other thing I wanted to point out is that Pluto here at 20 degrees of Capricorn, 48 minutes, is making a quincunx to his north node at 20 degrees of Gemini, 48 minutes. So that's exact. That's exact. An exact quincunx. And as I said, the quincunx is this blue line which represents a karmic readjustment. So here you have Pluto, that's all about power, and that means also the abuse of power. So, you know, as I said, we've got it going on over here with the north node on his Pluto over here. Now we've got it in Pluto over here, making a quincunx to his north node over here. So he's got it happening in 2 ways, that the karma is saying your abuse of power needs to be addressed, and it will be. You either do it yourself or others will do it for you, but you will face this karmically. So that was interesting to me that at the very moment that Jupiter goes retrograde, this was making an exact quincunx. And the thing you have to consider is that the chart has 360 degrees. So that in itself, it makes it very unusual. But then the fact that it's making, that it was at that very point, at the very moment that Jupiter is going retrograde in his 4th house of home, it's not coincidental. So there's definitely something karmic unfolding here. Okay, and then the last thing I wanted to point out is that Venus is conjunct Mercury up here in his 9th house. The 9th house rules a number of things. One of the things, like its broadest definition, would be consciousness expansion. But some other things it rules is it's an information house. And so the 3rd house is an information house, and the 9th house is an information house. So as you can see, there's a 9 here. This is the 9th house. 3 here. This is the 3rd house. So this is more about the personal information, communication, the way we think, the way we learn, the way we communicate, technologies for communication. And the 9th house is about broadcasting out into the world. So that can be literally broadcasting, like public television, any kind of broadcasting on the internet, publication, higher education. It also rules foreign entities, because there's this idea that when we connect with and communicate with things that are foreign to us, like the unknown, or foreign in terms of other countries, things that are international, that's expanding our consciousness. So that's what the ninth house rules. It also rules law. And so when I saw this, I thought, well, that's very interesting, because it just came out in the news that Stormy Daniels is suing Donald Trump. And so I think a lot more information is going to be broadcasted, with Venus, which rules women, and conjunct Mercury, which rules information and communication, in the ninth house of law and broadcasting. So lots of women are going to have some information to share, both in a legal setting and in terms of broadcasting the information out into the world. Okay, so that, I think, pretty much covers everything I wanted to share with you about what happens tomorrow when Jupiter goes retrograde, and the meaning of all of these things in his chart. So now what I want to do is I am going to share with you the next chart, which, let me go ahead and switch over to that. Okay. This one will be Jupiter direct. And this one happens on July 10th at 1:03 p.m. in Washington, D.C. So let's see, that's from March to April, May, June, July. So that's 4 months. And over that 4-month time period, many things will be happening. So what we're going to do is we're going to look at where the planets land when Jupiter goes direct, and that way it will tell us something about what happens during those 4 months. Okay, so let's start over here in the first house of self again. So one of the things that will happen is that during those 4 months, the North Node will make an exact conjunction to his Pluto. So as I said, as we go along during these 4 months, I will be doing more videos and discussing with you more of these charts. So when it gets to that point where the North Node makes an exact conjunction to his Pluto, I will do another chart and we'll see what's happening, so that we know how that North Node on his Pluto is manifesting in this space-time continuum. Because this chart, you know, it's like I'm reporting the news of Donald Trump's karma, okay? So, like, for example, if you like to watch MSNBC news or CNN, or maybe you even like to watch Fox, or any other news channel, NPR, Democracy Now!, that are reporting the news of what's happening in the White House, in Washington, D.C., with the FBI investigation, and all these incredible things that are coming to light about how the Russians interfered in our elections, and how certain people were so desperate for personal advantage that they were willing to collude with the Russians in order to benefit their own selves, in spite of the fact that that is literally treason against our country. So that's one of the things that will happen, is we'll have this North Node conjunct Pluto. So I'll do another video when we get to that point. And then the next thing I want to talk about is, again, Jupiter is in the 4th house of home. And as I said, that can represent many things. It can represent your family and your foundations. So the family, it's often family of origin, but because Donald Trump is much older now, he's in his 70s. That means that he is the patriarch. So, you know, his family of origin have all passed away. So now he's the patriarch. So this would include his current nuclear family and extended family as well. So that also includes his current marriage and his children. They're ruled by other houses as well, but one of the houses they're ruled by is the fourth house of home. And it also rules where you physically live. So it also represents his time in the White House. Okay, so let's look at the next thing here. Let's go back to Saturn. As I said, Saturn will oppose his Mercury when it's direct. It will hit 9 degrees. It will turn retrograde. It will hit his Mercury again. And now you can see at this point it's still retrograde. So it has to finish out its cycle. At some point, it will turn direct again, and then it will oppose his Mercury a third time. So whatever is unfolding won't necessarily be fully complete until Saturn makes its final opposition to Mercury. Interestingly enough, at this point, though, it's also squaring his natal Neptune. So as I've said many times, Neptune represents things that are hidden. It can rule deceit, deception, self-delusion, and mental illness. It also dissolves things. So we've been seeing that happen too. Like, for example, the dissolution right now that's occurring in the White House with all these people making this just grand exodus from the White House. That's an effect of Neptune because it is causing a dissolution of the structure of people who've been working in the White House, and now it's like it's poured acid on, and it's just dissolving it, and everybody is just running away as fast as they can. So with the Saturn, as I said, Saturn is all about limitations. It cuts things away, and it brings endings, and so and it also brings us into the realization of this harsh, cold, physical time-space continuum that we live in here. And it is in his 6th house of work. So Saturn is bringing some hard, cold reality to him in the 6th house of work. And it's squaring his Neptune. And what it does when it's squaring Neptune is it says any of this thing that's been going on with lying, deception, deceit, mental illness, self-delusion, deluding other people, that has to stop. And that's what the square does from Saturn, is it says we're going to bring a stop to that. Interestingly enough, this Neptune retrograde is actually in his 3rd house of communication. That's why I say, you know, I actually believe that Donald Trump is a pathological liar because he actually doesn't realize. I mean, a lot of people think that when he constantly change, you know, like one day he can say one thing and the next day he'll say something completely different. Or, you know, maybe it takes him a few months, but he will take every side of the story. He doesn't have one single story. The only single story that Donald Trump has is he's all about himself. That's it. That's the only thing that is consistent about Donald Trump, is he's all about himself. As far as this is concerned, he literally doesn't know the difference between truth and fiction, or truth and lies, truth and deception. He literally does not know the difference. And that is the definition of a pathological liar, is someone who cannot tell the difference. He doesn't know the difference. And I think that's really sad. That is a form of mental illness. But Saturn, you know, I mean, people can learn too. Maybe he's incapable. You know, he's in his 70s now. It may be that he will never be capable of understanding the difference. But other people are going to bring it to his awareness, whether he likes it or not, and whether or not he can like take that into his brain. It will happen. So that's what this square is all about. Alrighty, so as I said, Pluto is getting very close to his vertex, which rules fate, and Pluto rules karma, and it's in his sixth house of work, and this is also about the abuse of power and having to face the repercussions of that when you abuse power. And it's moving into a conjunction with his vertex, his fate in the sixth house of home, and that's not going to be pretty when that happens. It may be, I know it only gets to 21 degrees before Pluto turns retrograde, so it won't make an exact conjunction, but I think it will be close enough that he will definitely feel it before it goes retrograde. So the next one I want to look at is Mars conjunct the South Node in his seventh house of long-term meaningful relationships of other people. Mars usually represents men. It can also represent institutions. So it could represent, and also the thing about the way that these energies manifest is that they don't always necessarily represent one person. Sometimes they do. Sometimes they can actually manifest in multiple people. But I would tend to think that this will manifest in the form of a man or several men, or an institution, or a government, or a warrior-like energy, okay? So I'm not going to say that this is the FBI investigation, or Mueller, or John Kelly, or North Korea, or Russia. You know, I'm not going to say exactly how this energy is going to manifest, but all I can say is it will probably come in the form of at least one man or several men, or a warlike energy, okay? And it will be conjunct the South Node, which, as I said, rules our karma from the past and lessons that we need to learn so that we can release them. So this is a taking away of something. It's a demand from the cosmic curriculum that says you will learn this lesson once and for all. And it's coming from his seventh house of others. And it says these people, whoever they are, wherever they are going to force you to face your karmic lessons that you have been ignoring all these years. It is going to force you to do that so that you can finally learn your lessons and release whatever you need to release from your past karma. All right, so let's see if there's anything else here. It's interesting now we have Uranus in Taurus, which many astrologers are saying, and I totally agree with this, that this is going to bring revolution to our financial systems, and that actually starts in May during the Jupiter retrograde. So we'll see, we'll start to see the first signs of that when Uranus moves into Taurus in May. But for the moment, I'm not going to say anything about that. I want us to get a little bit closer to that date and see what happens on that day. All right, so I think that pretty much covers it. As you can see, there's a lot going on. Oh, there was one more thing I wanted to share here, which was this quincunx. As I've said many times, the quincunx represents karmic readjustment, which I thought was interesting, that this Mars conjunct the South Node in his house of others is making a quincunx to the Mercury, which I said is going to be opposed 3 times by Saturn. At this point, it's already been opposed twice by Saturn. And this only happens once. When it hits this point in his life, it only happens every 29 years. So it's not like it's a regular occurrence. For most people, if he lives to be 90 years old, he might have this come around a 3rd time. So starts over here. So that would be the first 29 years, the second 29 years, the third 29 years here. So this is basically 2.5 times around. So Yeah, so this will be the second time that this has happened in his life. So it's, as you can see, it's actually a very rare occurrence. And the fact that it's going retrograde opposite his Mercury means that he has some very important lessons to learn about Mercury in the 12th house. So we have Saturn here in a 6th house of work opposite Mercury here, and all about information and the way he communicates in his 12th house of things that are hidden. So he likes to hide himself, his true self. He doesn't, he's sort of mercurial in that sense. He doesn't really seem to know who he is. And that's often true of narcissists. They're so, narcissists, you know, they act arrogant, and they come across as if they're the only person on the planet who matters. But the truth is underneath that arrogance and that narcissism and that self-absorption is actually, he is absolutely terrified that he is, that he's meaningless, that he doesn't matter. I mean, that is the thing that absolutely terrifies him more than anything else, is that he doesn't matter, that he actually at his core doesn't exist. And that's why he is so self-absorbed and so narcissistic and just wants to be the center of attention all the time, is because deep down inside, he is actually terrified that he doesn't matter and that he actually doesn't exist. That is the truth about what goes on deep, deep, deep in the core of Donald Trump. And it's sad, you know, I mean, I actually feel compassion for him. I don't want him in the White House. I don't think he's good for this country, but I actually feel compassion for him because I understand his mental illness. So this is interesting because we have first Saturn going opposite here. Like I said, it's very rare, and it's going to happen 3 times at this juncture. And it's also squaring his Neptune over here, which is having a similar effect. And then we have Mars over here conjunct the South Node, making a quincunx to his Mercury. So it's like he's getting it bam, 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 so that he'll really get this lesson. And the other thing to consider is that Mercury is the ruler of his Sun, which is conjunct the North Node. So he's got some really important karmic lessons to learn that he will be forced to learn during this Jupiter retrograde, whether he likes it or not. He may not be capable of learning his karmic lessons, but other people are going to do everything in their power. You know, it's really the cosmic forces, the cosmic curriculum that are trying to get through to him, whether or not they can, whether or not he could take it in and change, I don't know. He may be too far gone at this point in his life to ever be able to change, but he will face the consequences regardless. So I think that's enough for today. I'm going to bring this to a close. So I just want to say that I have really appreciated all the comments that people have been making, and even though I don't always have the time to respond directly to every single person's comment, I want you to know that I am reading them, and that so many of them I appreciate so much. It feels like a conversation, and I really enjoy that. And I also appreciate so much people subscribing to this channel, because I'm trying to build this channel and get this message out. And thank you for all your likes on this video. Thank you for sharing on your social media and with your friends and family. And I also want to say one little thing, which is that I've noticed a couple of negative comments, which is fine. I shouldn't even use the word negative, because really it's okay if people disagree. And I have gotten a couple of comments from people who disagree. One said that Donald Trump will rise from the ashes like a phoenix and complete 2 terms. And someone else said that he will be in office for 2 terms, and I shouldn't waste people's time. But I just have to chuckle at that. But, you know, and although I trust astrology, obviously, and I trust my intuition, and I believe what I see in the charts and in the cards, and I have a couple of cards I want to share with you too. But at the same time, I think sometimes the cosmos plays tricks on us because we have lessons that we have to learn too. And I think one of the lessons that we're being called to learn in this country is to be able to listen to opposing viewpoints. And so I have asked on my, in the comments below my videos, if you are, if you have a differing opinion from mine, and if you know, for example, if you're a Republican or a Trump supporter, and you like Trump and you think he's doing a good job, I welcome your comments if you want to say what you like about him and what you think he's doing well. I would actually be very interested in hearing that. As it turned out, when I made that request in the comments below my videos, nobody responded. Nobody said, well, here's what I like about Donald Trump. Here's what I think he's doing good. No, they didn't. And I thought, well, that seems really odd to me because I thought, well, what could that mean? A couple answers that came to my mind was, well, maybe they're just illiterate. They don't know how to communicate them, you know, what they like, what they think he's doing well. Maybe they're, you know, they literally don't know how to communicate. And then the other thought that came to me that actually I thought could be true is that people who get on and they don't actually engage in a conversation, they don't actually tell you what they like about Donald Trump, what they think he's doing well, is because they're probably just Russian trolls. You know, they are people who probably are literally getting paid to go around to social media through the internet and comment, you know, on different social media and say things like what these people have said, you know, that Donald Trump is going to last 2 terms, and I shouldn't waste people's time because, yeah, if you know, I mean, everybody needs a job, and maybe that's their job. Everybody needs a way to survive. So maybe that's their job, is they just go around and say things like that. But they're not real people. I mean, real Americans. They're human, probably human beings. They're probably not computer programs, but maybe they are. Maybe they're just computer bots. But I think most likely they're probably Russian trolls who are just going around on social media making comments like that, just to rile people up. But it just makes me laugh. Because I think ultimately we're going to be victorious. We're smart enough in this country. We're going to pull it together, and we're going to realize that we're Americans. We've always been Americans, and that's what matters. What matters is what our country actually stands for, and the Constitution, and the things that all of us grew up loving and respecting. That's what we value. It's what we want to protect. And we're smart enough not to let our heads be played with. So if you see any more Russian trolls, just laugh it off, because they're not going to win. Okay? So I wanted to show you this card again, because I mentioned that I had pulled this card before from this deck that I really like called Soul Cards, and when I had asked for a card that represented Donald Trump. So I hope you can see this, because it's pretty amazing. Like, you can see this fiery orange hair and this fiery energy coming out of him, and the face, I don't know if it shows up very clearly. The face is really dark, but it actually, like, I can see it really clearly in the reflection, so I hope you can too. But that face, actually, the shape of it looks so much like Donald Trump. It's amazing. And what I found even more amazing was the way that he's trying to cover up these people's eyes so that they can't see what's going on. He's trying to hide something so that they can't see the truth. So that was very interesting. And then I just asked again for the same deck to show me another card that would represent the lessons being learned from this Jupiter retrograde. So this is kind of like, maybe this is at the beginning, like what's going on now. He's still trying to hide the truth. And this is toward the end of the Jupiter retrograde. He looks very alone, very lost and alone, very sad. So, you know, the thing about it, I also want to say is that I never paid attention to Donald Trump. He was not in my consciousness. I was never interested in The Apprentice. Just doesn't interest me. So I never paid attention to him or cared what he was doing until he started running for president. And then, especially when he got the Republican nomination, then I started to pay attention because I did not think he would make a good president. And I don't think he's made America great. I think he is he's causing more harm than good. And but I want to make very clear that I don't hate Donald Trump. Okay, he's a human being like all of us. He may have some mental illness. He's not. I don't think he's competent to be president of the United States. I think something needs to be done about it. And and if it requires the law to run its course and do what it needs to do, I support that. But as one human being to any other human being who's listening here, I just want to say that I feel compassion for this person because I really do think he has a mental illness, and I don't have any hate in my heart. And I know a lot of you are angry. I know that because I've heard that and I've seen that in the comments, and I don't want to disregard or invalidate the outrage that many people are feeling. I hear you, okay? I'm just sharing another side that I believe that one of the greatest things we can do for this country is open our hearts to each other and be willing to listen to the different viewpoints and not close our hearts up with hate. And if you feel anger, feel free to share what you're angry about. I think it's healthy to share our anger. That's part of the healing is when we're allowed to share our anger. So anyway, I just wanted to share that with you and let you know where I'm coming from emotionally, and that I'm also open to hearing what other people have to say. And we don't have to agree. I'm open to hearing other viewpoints as well. Okay, so thank you for listening to this video and for all your comments, and I will be back with another video as soon as I am able to. And I look forward to seeing you then. Bye-bye.